So thank you for coming, and we'll talk about measurement today. And of course, counting is going to come into measurement as well. This is a handout that has a lot of the ideas we're going to talk about and activities with each of them, so that you don't have to scramble to take notes, and probably we'll have more things down here than we'll get to talk about in our time frame tonight. But to start, I wanted you to each think about something you measured lately, a way in which you use measurement, maybe even in the last week, or other things that you think about when the word measurement comes to mind.
Tonight I was measuring water for some pasta primavera that I was making for my children.
Cups of water.
I knit, so sometimes I measure the length and the width to see if the gauge is correct.
Lori, you measure anything recently?
Measuring the success of our program in terms of the number of people trained.
Last night I had to ship a box, so I had to measure the dimensions, the length, width, height, and also the weight.
I was going to ask if anyone stepped on a scale in the last week or so. We're constantly measuring and taking it for granted, but thinking about what's common to all the kinds of measurement. Do you have a thought about some of the pieces that make all these very different things be called measurement?
Standardized unit. It's a standardized unit of
That
measurement.
each one might have a standardized unit to it?
It can be counted.
They can be counted. Some of them can, like the water can't. Thinking about how when we measure something, the first thing we do is think about just one attribute of the thing. If you know that this person is 4'11" tall, that's all you know. You have no idea, is it an adult or a child? Is it a math teacher or an artist? You only know the attribute of height, that's all you know. And so in order to do measurement with little kids, like you guys have, you have to start by helping them isolate one attribute at a time. Because if they can't focus on just one attribute, you can go through all the steps of measurement, and at the end, they don't know what you did. So I brought some attribute activities that we could do, because you can do them endlessly, enjoyably with your children. And they can become very sophisticated. We can make puzzles to challenge each other as adults as we think about the higher levels of it. We're going to talk about doing it first with little children. So if the three of you will work together, what would you like to use to start? I'll give you guys.
We'll do the keys.
The keys, okay. And you two, what would you like to use?
The
Buttons, okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll take and start thinking about attributes that they have. And then I'm going to give you each a string, which is a circle. And as you think about it, you might use one attribute and pick all the buttons or all the keys that have that attribute in common and put it inside the string.
This is so scary.
Definition, but they're shiny.
Or you can do just geometric, right? Geometric pattern, period. So you've got a triangle in there, you've got a triangle in there. Show a geometric pattern.
So we create a tiny file.
This is shiny too. It's very sparkly,
Right.
but it's not really like those
Correct.
others. And these are all alike.
Because the idea is to start to focus the children on one attribute, even though others may be different. This is completely a part of what happens in language acquisition as well. The two subjects become very tightly intertwined, especially with the little kids and with these kind of activities. Just like a child learning what a chair is, right? Sorting out in their mind what things are chairs, and that they do sort out the category of chair. You go into a room you've never been in before and say, let's go sit in the chairs. Even a crawling baby, I discovered, knows what that means even before the child says that word. And children are constantly sorting in life. That's part of how they're making sense of things. So it's something that you can do. And was I right to say it's fun to do? That's enjoyable. And you can imagine my children and I have fun collecting some of these things. You may not know about how to identify a tree from its leaf. And so when you're doing that together, it's a completely different thing from setting out to teach something in a way that you know it all and the child doesn't. And so it can be very friendly. But you have in mind that this is also going to be a prerequisite for measuring anything and thinking about what part of the object, what attribute am I looking at. It will bother them at first that you're not putting exactly the same buttons in the circle and that you're looking for all the blue ones. And when I do this in the 4-5 rooms, it's very funny to see how hard it is for children to notice when we've put all the blue shapes or buttons in the center and to say what's the same about all of them. And the children are completely stumped. And then gradually, as it becomes very easy for them and obvious to them and silly even, you can ask another family member to come and guess what characteristic you chose to sort on. It's a lot of fun to do that. It can be quite stumping. The children eventually, with the buttons, will notice that some have 2 holes and some have 4 holes, and that's not as easy to notice from a distance, and they'll sort them that way or try to get trickier and trickier about things that are going to be hard for someone to guess, and that's very nice, is that they're thinking more and more about it and have fun.
That's right.
So
Oh, I see.
the ones with this kind of little bumped head and
Or brass.
brass colored are in this circle that's labeled brass colored. This circle, this entire circle, is these little bumped out heads, and the section in the center is both characteristics. But you have in mind that this is also going to be a prerequisite for measuring anything and thinking about what part of the object, what attribute am I looking at, and taking a standardized scale that you mentioned and putting that object against a standardized scale eventually. We'll start, though, without using the formal standardized scales when we're measuring things. We'll start by using a string of paper clips or a stack of Legos. I've made some stacks of Legos. I can measure the length. Actually, I'll do the width of this table here. I can measure this. I've done something to make life easy for me and also prefiguring what the kids have to learn later, which is marking every 10th Lego with a black. Counting by ones at first is the only meaningful kind of counting to children. You can ask a child to count by 2s who knows the chant of counting by 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8, and often they will go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and move only one at a time because they don't yet understand that it's tied to quantity. And there is a point at which they understand that, but for most of your children, they're not going to be there yet. For an older child who's learning 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, looks like it's about 79 Legos. I want to make sure that they're really getting what those 2-digit numbers are, because our place value system is going to be the underlying issue in all the arithmetic they have to learn. When a child's having difficulty with arithmetic, it's always place value understanding that they don't have.
Could you explain place value?
Oh, okay. Oh, good.
Question.
When I talk to children, I tell them our number system is actually a secret code. They like to hear it that way, and it is. When we write the number 23, it doesn't mean 2 and 3. You have to be in on the secret code that 2 in 23 stands for 2 tens. In this, 2 tens in this case of the Legos. So I'm talking about where you're going to go eventually with having the children understand 30 means 3 tens and 3. If something's 33 long, then it's the same as having 3 sticks of 10. Eventually, you'll want them to use rulers and understand standard measurement. So you're going to progress so that any time you need to measure anything, if you can do it in front of your kids, if you can think about it out loud so they see you doing it, using it, hear how it's done. Not only do we need to find a measurement whose attribute matches the attribute we want to measure, right? We can't use a scale and weights to measure height. We have to match the attribute. We also can't use miles to measure our heights because the numbers will be so small that they won't be meaningful. So we need to match the attribute, and we also have to match the scale, the size of the measurement unit to a reasonable facsimile to the size of the thing we're measuring. So that's 2 forms of match we'll need to make.